Cool. How did it go at Pioneers?
It was great. Yeah.
Did they do stuff with your footage?
Not that I know of.
Okay, stand by. Here we go.
I'll have to talk to you about all the...
5.
Hey, I'm Elisa Parker. We're broadcasting from the Wild and Scenic Film Festival. It's one of the largest film festivals of its kind in the world, which is pretty exciting because we're here in downtown Nevada City. And also it's taking place in Grass Valley, right next to Nevada City. And thousands of people come to hang out in our little town. And it's pretty exciting. Chad Nicholson traveled from Pittsburgh, although you used to live here.
That's right,
So
about 5 years ago. Yep.
So you're going back, kind of, probably not back to your roots. Did you grow up here?
No, I grew up in Michigan, so I'm a Midwest boy.
Oh, Midwest
I didn't even
guy.
know what compost was until I got out to California
Wow.
when I was about 21.
Are you composting now?
Of course.
Chad is part of the film We the People 2.0, and also there's a whole project. He's going to be doing a workshop today, and then coffee talk as well. What are you going to do in the coffee talk tomorrow?
It's not a coffee talk, it's a fireside chat.
Oh,
I've
you
been
don't want to
corrected.
do, it's not going to be coffee.
Right, I think-
no
yeah.
coffee talk, fireside chat. Does
And
that
it will
sound
be at a
more
bar at the
that sounds
Golden
more
Era
masculine?
at 3 in the afternoon. I think the purpose is because you can't have a revolution unless there's beer or wine involved,
Beer
and
or
so
wine.
it had to be at a bar.
Well, you could be supercharged with coffee, but I'll go with that. The fireside chat, if that sounds good too. So, okay, We the People 2.0. We're at a point, democracy-wise, why a lot of us are thinking, what does democracy look like now here in America, and what are we going to do about all this as individual, everyday citizens? So tell us about that and how it ties into the work that you're doing.
Yeah, so the film that I'm here to discuss and represent is We the People 2.0. I'm an organizer with the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund, and the film is put out by Tree Media. So they contacted us and wanted to take a look at our work and follow some of the communities and the fights that have been going on that we've been working with communities across the nation. I've been hearing a lot recently about this idea that we don't live in a democracy or that our democracy is gone or it's failing. And frankly, the communities that we've been working with over the past 15, 20 years across the country have found that we don't really have a democracy to begin with, that it's not just failing, that from the very beginning of this country's founding with our Constitution that was written in 1787, it was actually written and intended to protect the wealthy and the elite and property and commercial interests at the expense of communities and nature. That's how it was DNA'd. They looked across the nation and saw a lot of natural resources to exploit, wanted to generate wealth, and that was how they did it, was through the creation of the Constitution. It's not what we're usually taught in school. We're taught that it was the greatest document that's ever been written by anybody ever in the history of the world, and there was angels hovering over Independence Hall in Philadelphia when it was written. I mean, that's the myth that we're given. And we believe that a lot of times until it comes to actually trying to use that Constitution to protect our communities or to protect the environment that we love. And then folks find out that the Constitution is actually being used to benefit and enrich corporate interests at the expense of our communities.
It's always been then about that 1%.
It really has. And, there's been a lot of gains made over the past couple of hundred years. We have the abolitionists, we have the suffragists, the labor, the civil rights movements. But those have all been 40, 50, 80-year fights. That wasn't just folks that stepped up and said, okay, we're going to use the Constitution to protect ourselves now. They really had to fight. They had to be in the streets. They had to engage in civil disobedience because they found that they didn't have democratic levers available to them either. So coming back to the film, our work started with communities calling us that we're facing environmental threats. These days, a lot of it's to do with gas and oil extraction, fracking. There's toxic
mining.
waste incinerators, around here, gold mining, water withdrawals in a lot of places, you name it, forestry issues.
Toxic air pollution.
Thousands. We could spend the rest of the segment just naming off all the problems that folks are facing in their communities. And when they try to stop these things, they're usually told that they can't, that the community doesn't have the authority to stop the fracking or to stop the mining project. And they're told that they can't because of two main doctrines. They're told that they're preempted, either by state or federal law, that the state regulatory agencies or the federal regulatory agencies are going to decide how mining or how fracking is going to operate within the community, and so they're actually preempted by higher levels of law, or they're told that corporations have certain constitutional rights. So some folks are familiar with the Citizens United decision from 2010, which the Supreme Court authorized corporations to spend unlimited amounts of money to influence elections and campaigns. Frankly, from our perspective, that was just a cherry on top of corporate rights cases. Those started back in the 1880s, where corporations have now been granted constitutional Bill of Rights protections under the First Amendment, rights to free speech, under the Fourth Amendment, rights to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures, Fifth Amendment, rights to due process, 14th Amendment, rights to equal protection under the law. All these things that were originally in our Constitution to protect individuals have now been bestowed on corporations. All sounds academic and legalese. Sometimes people's eyes glaze over when they hear me talk about this stuff. But it becomes real when a community tries to stop a corporate industrial activity, and the corporation threatens them and says, our rights are actually greater than the rights of those of you living in your community. And what it means is that 7 people on a corporate board headquartered in Texas can actually use their constitutional rights to override what a majority of people living in your community may want to see.
Tell us, Chad, about a story, an example of this that's going on right now with people taking this into their own hands and trying to shift what democracy could look like to help serve the greater good.
Yeah, so to bring it down to earth, one community in particular, hot off the presses yesterday morning, is Highland Township, a small rural community, northwestern Pennsylvania, about 500 people, that has been fighting off a frack wastewater injection well for the last 4 years at this point. So Seneca Resources is a polluting corporation. They're in one of the top 10 violators of permits in Pennsylvania. They want to engage in a frack wastewater injection well. That's where they take frack waste, the waste that's left over from fracking operations. It can be radioactive. It contains toxic contaminants. The corporation's not required to disclose what's in that frack waste. It's caused earthquakes in other states. The corporation wants to dump it in the middle of this community. The community said, we don't want it here. They passed laws, 2 laws at this point, to prohibit it. The corporation has now sued them twice. Corporation claiming that their constitutional rights are being violated and that the corporation actually has a right to inject the waste in that community even though the people don't want it. They're threatening to bankrupt that community. In addition to that, they are also potentially threatening the elected officials in that and other communities with criminal prosecution for trying to protect the community. So there are a lot of legal tools that are working on behalf of corporate interests and that are actually legalized by the state right now. And our corporations are finding that our state and federal constitutions really are not on their side. So they're having to go back to the drawing board. They're having to say, we are not going to be protected by anybody else. Environmental groups, by our state or federal legislators, by the regulatory agencies. We're going to have to do the hard work ourselves. We're going to have to turn to each other, not to other people, and be the ones that actually protect our community.
So when that talks about the hard work that we need to do, I think someone watching this might be thinking, it's infuriating, and then what can I do? So based on the work that you've been doing around this, what are some action items that you share to help people create this momentum and really make something happen, like the situation you were just talking about?
Yeah, unfortunately, folks often have to experience firsthand that they're not going to get help from their state or federal regulatory agencies or legislators. But that said, from our perspective, the system is currently not working to benefit our communities. People have to get clear on what their values and their priorities are, and they have to ask a very simple question, which is, can we get what we want within the system that we currently have, or are we going to have to challenge that system, step outside of it, and create a brand new structure of law that protects our rights? And so the question really for us is, how do we step away from asking what we can get for our community and instead say, what is it that we want? What do we want to see for our future, for our children, for everything that's important to us to protect the environment, and then begin to create the system of law and take action, even if it means direct action or civil disobedience in our communities, to actually bring that vision into existence and not expect that somebody else is going to do it for us. The hard part of this work is that it is a hell of a lot of hard work and that nobody else is going to do it for you. And we have to, from our perspective, get it out of our heads that somebody else is going to save us. The only ones that are going to save us in our community and what we love is those of us that live there.
We're the only ones that can save ourselves. It's so true. It is so true. And I'm so glad you brought up the importance of clarifying the intention. We were just mobilizing with some local women here, Nevada County Women United, and that was one of the things that I pointed out is it's okay, we're talking about issues and who's involved, who has the resources, but I'm like, we really need to know what it looks like. What do we want? How do we know when we've received that? how do we know when we've achieved that? And so clarifying those intentions is so important. And Chad, my last question is, we talked about last night about being at the edge, and that's our theme of Wild and Scenic. So what's a personal moment for you when you've had to be at the edge and take that extra step, that leap to just jump in?
The edge for me personally, and I mean, I experience edges with communities every day that are frequently facing the worst thing that has ever happened to them. So those are edges every day. But for me personally, it came in New Orleans almost a decade ago when I was down there post-Katrina for a significant amount of time. And at that point, I still believed in a lot of the myths that we had been given about this country, about how we help people in their times of need, and that, I know there was a lot of money and resources that was being sent down there to help folks rebuild their lives. What I experienced was that most of that money and resources didn't end up making it to the people it was intended for, and it ended up enriching a small number of people, state or federal levels, or their hand-picked contractors. Yeah. I heard a speech by our executive director actually in Nevada City a couple of years after New Orleans, and he basically said that the system was working as it was intended. There wasn't a flaw, which is that our system is set up to benefit a small number of people at the expense of communities and majorities of people. I heard that, and I said, I have a choice to make now. I don't know where he got that analysis, but that makes sense to me. It aligns with my experience in New Orleans. And I actually packed up my life in California, and I moved up to Spokane, Washington to get started working with the Legal Defense Fund and with this organizing. So that was the edge for me.
Wow. Good for you, Chad. We the People 2.0. Check it out. And where can people go get more information?
They can get information at celdef.org, CELDF.org. That's C for community, E for environmental, L for legal, D for defense, F for fund.org. Sorry, but it's a long one. Or they can, we have actually materials that will be handing out at all of the events that we're at this weekend as well.
Awesome. All right, I'm Elisa Parker, broadcasting here from the Wild and Scenic Film Fest Media Lounge. Come on down to Wild and Scenic. We're going to be here through Sunday. All right, thanks so much, guys. Thanks, Chad. That was awesome. Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for hanging out, too.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Can we get a picture?
Yeah.